We don't need all the rebalancing right now. Right now, we need multiplayer to work.
Yeah. Oh, Lords of the Fallen gets another update that addresses some of the important issues the game has, but fundamentally almost everything you can see in the patch notes is not what the game needs right now in my opinion. Hi, how you going? Today I want to talk about yet another Lords of the Fallen update, 1.1.326, and this video will be both informative to keep you up to speed with all the new stuff, and I'd also like to share my personal opinion on some of the changes and highlight what I think Hexworks should concentrate on instead. Now when I say what Hexworks should concentrate on instead, I say it as a person who just consumes the content, right? I know that game development, coding and all that stuff isn't easy, and maybe there's a reason why they keep postponing addressing the issues a lot of people are having with the game. I'd also like to add that I love Lords of the Fallen, I've put some hours in, and I'm in the middle of my third playthrough. The only game I've ever 100%ed was Soma, and to 100% Soma you just need to finish Soma, but Lords could be the first game I'm actually gonna complete 100%. So yeah, I'm not trying to attack your favorite game, and I'm also not defending the devs. I'm just sharing my opinion, and in return I want to hear yours in the comments. With that out of the way, let's see what this new update is about, shall we? Right, patch 1.1.326 is a big boy. We have lock-on overhaul, improved stability, improved performance. Some of the bosses now have buffed health pools and their damage output is higher. PvE is being rebalanced separately from PvP. Umbral Ending is fixed, or so it seems, and then some. The first thing I'd like to talk about is lock-on overhaul. You now have a few options to choose from: precision, dynamic, proximity and legacy. Precision will prioritize enemies that are closer to the center of your screen, with enemies around the borders ignored. Dynamic will prioritize enemies that are closer to the center of the screen but without limits, meaning that you will still be able to lock on to enemies farther from the center. Proximity will prioritize enemies that are nearest to the player, and the last one, legacy, represents the original lock-on system from the game's launch. I've tested all of them, and the closest ones to what I'd want to see in the game are dynamic, and it might sound weird, but legacy. The proximity one is an absolute dumpster fire in the situations where you are surrounded by melee enemies and have a few ranged mobs attacking you from afar. And let's be honest, it's not a rare occurrence in Lords of the Fallen. What I think would be a nice addition is an option to disable camera auto-centering when the system fails to lock onto something. This shit killed me more times than the ambushes. I say this thing should be optional because as far as I know, camera auto-centering doesn't bother those playing the game with mouse and keyboard. Also, regardless of the setting I go with, the camera angle seems to be different sometimes in certain situations. And that makes fighting enemies so much harder because, you know, you can't see them very well. Check out this clip here, for example. When I lock on, the camera hangs so low my character almost entirely blocks the view. At first I thought it's because I was in the mines where the ceilings are low, but no, the ceilings are not the issue. I don't know if you've noticed that too in your game, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't like that in the earlier versions. Another crucial change is rebalanced bosses. All non-main bosses have received a health boost ranging from 10% to 20%, depending on where the player is in the game. It's less of a boost at the start and a higher boost towards the end. On top of that, all non-main bosses have received an overall 10% boost to the damage output, with adjustments made on a case-by-case basis to ensure they provide the appropriate level of challenge. Now, on paper this doesn't sound too good. In my opinion, more health and more damage doesn't always mean more challenge. As a matter of fact, it almost never is more challenge. It's more tedium and more annoyance at best. A lot of people complained about bosses being too easy, but what they probably meant was most of the bosses have 2 to 3 very well telegraphed attacks that are very easy to predict. That's how I feel about most of them anyways. Like, the issue with bosses being too easy is a core issue, and making them more spongy won't change the fact. They will still be the same bosses with the same 2 to 3 attacks, only will take longer to beat them. But in reality, it's not all that bad. Tancred, for example, is buffed now, and I gotta say I enjoyed fighting him so much. I'd say his health and damage output are both in the right place now, but of course I'm talking about a first playthrough version of Tancred. Tancred in New Game Plus was balanced with ass, it feels like, and is actually a great example of big health doesn't mean big challenge. On my very first playthrough, it took me around 60 seconds to beat Tancred and 60 more seconds to beat Reinhold the Immured, Tancred's second phase, on my first try. I just just went through him like knife goes through butter, and that made me extremely upset. I literally didn't get to see his attacks because he didn't get a chance to show them to me. I think Tancred is such a cool looking boss with a sick backstory, you kinda want to spend more time with him, you know? Anyways, now on the first playthrough, he might feel just right to you. I think every boss fight in Lords of the Fallen is extremely build dependent. Some people struggled with King Ranger boss on their first playthrough, but then melted through the progeny within a minute like they were putting down giant ugly infants for years. And the other way around, you know what I mean? I'd say don't get discouraged by the news of bosses being buffed, give it a try first. And before we continue, I've set a goal of reaching 2000 subs before 2024. So if you like what I do but haven't subscribed yet, do that now and help me reach that goal. In return, you will get new Souls-like related videos every week. Hey, subscribing and interacting with videos is the best way to support your favorite creators. And if you want more IRL related stuff, follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Also, for jolly chats in real time, join our community Discord. It's called Bush Dimension.
Bloody Bush Dimension.
If you get that, you'll fit right in. Right, let's continue. Another important update is fixed Umbral Ending. Some players couldn't finish the game because they got blocked at the Umbral Ending. Now when you load your character that should have received the ending, you will see the credits directly, receive the proper achievements and the proper rewards. And then get the prompt to move to New Game Plus, New Game Plus 0 or stay in the current world. Now I can't vouch for that because I'm yet to get the Umbral Ending, but I've seen a lot of people saying that the issue is still not fixed for them. So if you have any information about that, share it with us in the comments. A lot of performance and stability changes came with the latest patch, but it's incredibly hard for me to analyze them. Reduced the number of actors casting shadows. Optimization involved deleting hidden meshes, complex shaders that used alpha mask, vertex animated options. It feels like these reports are made for shareholders and not for men with ADHD wearing no pants reading through them. Bottom line is, performance is improved in Umbral and various locations in general. DLSS 3 has been updated for those with 40 series cards, but the frame gen has not yet been activated by default. To enable it, one needs to use this command. The link to the full thing will be in the description if you have no ADHD and wearing pants at the moment. On my own behalf, I'd like to say that I haven't experienced any changes in performance. It runs quite well for me for the most part, with very rare FPS drops. Nothing's changed much, but I guess there's still work to be done to improve overall performance. As far as I know, some people with above average rigs are still experiencing issues. Now let's talk about balancing. There's PVE balancing and PvP balancing. I don't think that balancing the game is a good idea when the game's main selling point, the multiplayer, works like dog shit most of the time, but here we go. In the patch notes you can find the exact spells and items that were tweaked or rebalanced. It doesn't make sense to go through each and every one of them in the video, but what's really cool is that they are rebalancing PvE and PvP separately. It's something that took From Software a lot of years to master, and I think Hexworks are doing it the right way. You know, it's extremely upsetting when your PvE build gets nerfed because somebody's abusing it in PvP and you don't even play PvP. There are more changes to come obviously, but spells, arrows and bolts do scale properly now in PvP, and according to the devs, using spells, ammo and various throwables is less OP now. But it doesn't really matter at the moment when your PvP looks like this. As a matter of fact, all balancing doesn't matter at the moment when your co-op looks like this. I know that it's fine for some people, but for me, for everyone I know who owns the game, and for most YouTubers I watch, multiplayer doesn't work properly. It lags, there are tons of latency issues and rubber banding, and joining somebody to help them with a boss most of the time means making things worse for them. You dodge an attack, then you lag, you die, and they have to spend their healing item to resurrect you. Lamau. At this point, for me, it's better to avoid multiplayer completely and just enjoy all the content solo. I know it might sound harsh, but I'm not saying all this to depreciate the work that has been done. I'm also in no position to tell the devs how to do their job. This is my feedback. I'd love multiplayer to work properly, and I'd love to see the game live on and flourish, and I don't mind waiting for a month or even a few months without any updates and then get properly working co-op and PvP. Unfortunately, I haven't seen them publicly acknowledging the poor state of the game's multiplayer, the game's main selling point for a lot of people. Anyways, on this note, here's what I think the game desperately needs once the multiplayer is working the way it should. I think that some sort of inventory sorting will be a very welcome addition. Towards the end of the game, you usually have so much loot, it's really hard to find something specific. I know it's probably on me, but I remember spending 5 minutes trying to find bloody glory in my inventory to upgrade it, and then 5 more minutes to equip it. And that, mind you, is 5 times longer than to beat Tancred in the vanilla version of the game. Item chest is a must as well, but we know that it's coming in the future. Also, another quality of life change to keep in mind. When purchasing consumables in bulk, you can't see how much currency you have because the screen blurs out. And if you're not sure you have enough, you have to cancel the purchase to check. Either let me see how much currency I've got, or add some kind of blocker that doesn't let me pick more items than I can afford. Also, I can't stress enough about how terrible the decision is to auto-add shit to your quick bar. Just why? Multiplayer scaling is a bit weird too at the moment. I don't know all the reasons, but sometimes you join somebody's game and deal little to no damage to trash mobs in Pilgrim's Perch. And then you join another game and your damage in Pilgrim's Perch is fine. It's most likely host dependent, maybe they are in their new game plus 8, but hey, I'm not the one picking them. What's the point of me joining somebody's game to assist them and being unable to assist them? PvP Arena would be a very nice addition for people who want to heavily lean into PvP. I think a place where people could have fair duels will give the game some extra longevity too. Disabling camera reset is another thing that should be an option in my opinion. Have you ever thought about how many times you actually press R3 or whatever your button is to reposition your camera? Exactly. When you are running sideways and trying to lock onto something dangerous, the last thing you need is your camera repositioned. For fuck's sake. I'd also love to see some sort of an indicator to see where the other player is in co-op. Sprinting is such a big part of this game, you know? Sometimes your co-op partner just runs off and it's really hard to find them. Well, you get teleported to them anyways after a while, and some might think that additional HUD is immersion breaking, but having an option to turn it on and off at least would be a very welcome addition for people with fucky eyes. For people like me, pretty much. Also, am I the only one whose Vanguard armor looks like this? It's especially weird when climbing ladders. Though I'm more than happy to look like a broom for an N amount of months if that would mean proper multiplayer. I will say it again, balancing the game, adjusting bosses' difficulty, nerfing spells, etc. are welcome changes, and I appreciate all the work that the devs are putting into the game. I appreciate the amount, I appreciate the consistency, and most importantly, I highly appreciate them listening to the community. I also think that Saul Gascon, head of Hexworks, is a pretty sick dude who genuinely loves video games.
Sorry.
But again, I think the issues with the multiplayer aspect can't and shouldn't be ignored. Multiplayer is like lifeblood of Souls-likes, and it directly affects the game's longevity. And I'm not a businessman, but working multiplayer equals more people playing, equals people don't lose interest as fast, equals more sales, equals more money. And it's only logical to make the game run well first, squish all the bugs, etc., and then start working on balancing it. And yeah, I know there's a roadmap and a lot of stuff is coming in the future, but that's a topic for another video. Thank you very much for watching this one. See ya.